Ladies and gentlemen, we are now live. Welcome to a conversation with Floyd Marshall Jr. I am your humble host, Floyd Marshall Jr. And as always, I am joined by my absolutely amazing, phenomenal, and beautiful co-host, Okima T. Moore. And today, ladies and gentlemen, we are joined by a very special guest. If you have ever watched reality TV and you were wondering, well, how did all of that start? Well, today, ladies and gentlemen, we have the groundbreaking pioneer of reality TV show. And I'm talking, we going back a couple of decades here. We have the pioneer of reality television, the one and only, the incomparable Tracy Baker-Simmons. Miss Simmons, welcome to a conversation with podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for that introduction.
Oh, you are so welcome. It is so well deserved. And I ain't even, big up it the way I wanted to. But ladies and gentlemen, before we get into this, I just want to give you guys a small background of what Miss Simmons has been involved in and what she has done over her 30 plus year career in the film and entertainment industry as someone who started with music videos, film, and producing. So we gonna do it like this. The Book of Love, Being Bobby Brown, Welcome to Dreamland, Sprite Step Off, Keith Sweat's Platinum House, The Houstons, On Our Own, The Houstons, remember Whitney, Bleaching Black Culture, Boss Nails, Bobbi Kristina, VH1 Beauty Bar, Hustle and Soul, T.I. and Tiny Friends and Family Hustle, On Spotlight, They Call Me Dad, Sugar Plum Twist, Love Match Atlanta, and so much more. So the resume is there. Miss Simmons, welcome to the show. We are so glad to have you.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, Okima, anything before we jump in?
Well, first of all, I am so excited to have Tracy here. I've known Tracy for the better part, 12 years? It's been over a decade. It's definitely been over a decade. It's been a little more than a decade.
Yeah.
And I have watched this woman that I admire, that I have grown to love as a sister and a colleague and a peer. And a cheerleader for me when I be like, I don't want to do none of this no more. And so, I think the first thing I want you to talk to the people about is like, how did we get here? It's Deborah Cox. How did you get here?
Yes, exactly. Oh my God. So, I just did a thing for some kids the other day. And honestly, I didn't even know this world. I watched very little TV growing up. I read a lot of books, watched very little television. And I didn't even know like being a producer was a thing. Like I didn't go to film school. I went to business school.
Same.
Yeah. So I moved to Atlanta out of college, and I was looking for something that made me happy, that I would do even if I wasn't getting paid to do it. And I stumbled into the entertainment business. I started out on the music side, marketing and promotions with Warner Brothers out of Atlanta, and working particularly in the Southeast region. And then when I got pregnant with my son, I realized that was going to be too tasking as a parent. Like, literally I had a record bag and I was pushing records to DJs and radio stations and things like that. I'm talking vinyl, right? And some guys approached me, actually a gentleman by the name of Keith Ward. He basically had heard about me, working with different artists through Warner Brothers, and he was looking for someone to be a producer for him, and really he needed someone to help him get connected with artists so he could do videos. And I was like, what does a producer do? And he said, well, if you can help us get deals. And I was like, okay, you know what, let me read a book about this. So I grabbed this book called What a Producer Does. And then I came back to him and utilizing all of my business skills. I was like, oh, this person handles finance and pretty much marketing or sales. So I was like, yeah, I'm down. Let's try it. And I literally started. I always say this to people. I don't know if it's good or bad because you're going to pay either way. You're going to pay, get an education, or you're going to pay in mistakes. But I started as a producer and I've never been anything but a producer. And you check my IMDb, all my credits are producer. So basically, I started producing music videos, and then ultimately we segued into commercials, because at that time that was the career path. Like you produce music videos, then you produce commercials, and then you were going to be producing movies, and or scripted television, because there was no reality television. And honestly, that's where how I started. I did an independent film, moved to LA for a bit in between, and I actually even also worked for Organized Noise, the guys who created Outkast and Goody Mob. And then from there, I ended up like basically coming back to Atlanta after doing the film, and was hoping to start my own company, really developing scripted projects and movies. And just was watching Bobby and Whitney on the news and watching a little bit of the Osbournes, and was thinking, why can't they have a show?
Hmm.
And then history was created.
Yeah, you
Wow.
walked us into that. You walked the Black community into Follow Doc series work.
Yeah.
Because the Osbournes were out. You
Mhm.
know, VH1 had already done, the Real World, and they had already started like Road Rules.
Yeah.
Osbournes were out, but you didn't see us.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
you didn't see our icons. Like Ozzy Osbourne was from back in the day, and we knew
Yeah.
that he was in this mental
He was
trend.
the guy who bit the head off.
Right.
Mhm.
He was the rock guy who bit the head off the bat. Like we knew that.
Yeah.
But you didn't, if you saw Black people in any of this world, it was always new. It was pretty much new people or like people at the radar. It wasn't superstars.
Right. I mean, they had one. It was like, you remember on Real World, it'll always be one Black girl and one Black guy.
Right. Well, right. So we had Heather B, who was a rapper, but she
Mhm.
was like her rap career was a little like waning at that time. You had Kevin Powell, who was just coming into his activism.
Yeah.
So it was they were always right at the radar. It was never like a superstar.
No.
And you put our first like, and they were Black superstars, but they were like pop superstars, so they were kind of universal superstars.
Yeah, they were
the first Black superstars who were Black.
Right.
Chronicled and followed. And I think that's what was so interesting, because it was really the foray into, I know your whole life for this amount of time that you've let me in, because you have let me in it. Like Bobby and Whitney let us in it. Sometimes it was too much in.
Did we need to see that?
Or hear that? Because
Mhm.
Bobby used to love to say, wow, like Whitney would start it and then Bobby would finish it. And it was just like, so you just gonna talk about sucking a fart on her butt? Okay. I mean, all right. I'll never forget that one. I'll never forget that.
God.
I'll never forget that.
Yeah.
Or the sunglasses in the store. You're never gonna forget the sunglasses. The sunglasses and the dance. Just get it.
Yeah, right. I mean, honestly, and I also, when people will say like, oh, it's you ushered us into, urban celebrity, and I'm like, I'm sorry, Ozzy Osbourne was not bigger than Whitney Houston.
No, but in the patriarchy and the supremacy of it all, he was right. Like to the Hollywood exec,
Mm-hmm.
he was to record sales and income.
No, exactly. I mean, and the thing is too is that Ozzy Osbourne wasn't even from this country,
right?
And he had a British accent. And if you ask Black people who he was, it was a limited thing. But if you ask white and Black people who Whitney Houston was,
they knew
exactly.
But
and
it was beating Bobby Brown. But Whitney was the draw.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, you know, in reality, there has to be what? Antagonist and a protagonist. So
Mhm.
it didn't work by itself. So you needed the two to counterbalance each other. And so it worked perfectly because of that.
And they switched those roles a lot, like
Like,
mid episode
yes,
sometimes.
exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
And
And people didn't know that.
do that.
Say
They're
that again.
one of the few, even to today, they're one of the few couples who literally do flip flop between who's the antagonist and the protagonist per episode, per
Yeah.
moment.
Well, because it was their show. Like, honestly, and of course now these shows are produced, and you know someone's deciding and
Mhm.
boarding up who's the, you know, who's this and who's that and what character you're playing and all of those beautiful things. But during that time, I mean, honestly, I never done a reality show before. Like, I literally, me and my partner, I was just watching the Osbournes. I was guessing what I think was happening on that show and how they were filming. And I was like, oh, they got some animals. So it looks like they shoot them so they can cut away to them. And it felt like they showed up in their house and that's what they were doing. So when we were pitching it to Bobbi and Whitney, in particular Bobbi, because we didn't pitch to Whitney, we pitched it to Bobbi.
Mhm.
And when we pitched, he said, what are we going to do? And I said, whatever you do. I don't know. What do you do? I just want people to see what you do. I don't know. And people might think you got Whitney Houston tied up in the damn basement somewhere. Because, honey, everything your fault. So let's see what it is.
Mhm.
And basically he was like, okay. And then he said to her, oh, these are my producers. And she said, producers? What are you talking about? He said, I
She
told you
only
I'm
knew
gonna do a
music.
reality show. And she was even looking at him like, what do you reality? You don't even know what a reality show is. We don't know what a reality show is. And they didn't know that I didn't know either.
Wow.
Listen, we know that our business, there is fake it till you make it, and then there is make the rules up as you go because you did the research.
You better figure it out.
There's two different versions.
Yes. And yeah, it's funny because I was having that conversation today with someone and I said, look, didn't know what I was doing per se, but I could watch. That's why I tell people, you want to make TV, watch TV. Why aren't you watching what you want to be doing?
Mhm.
So watching it and then saying, oh, I had a friend who worked at MTV who was directing. And I said, hey, why don't you come direct a couple of episodes for me? And then I had another friend who did documentary. And I said, oh, okay, I understand how that works. And I also, at that time, was thinking we should do interviews. And we did do them, but only for like, oh, this is how we're driving. And we were thinking of using it as voiceover or something. But when the network approached me and said, hey, we need to do sit down interviews, I said, oh no, they're not doing that. That's not happening. And you know, a lot of times people don't realize it, but I'm like, look at the show. There's no interviews in that show.
No, there weren't interviews. And if I'm not mistaken, you guys didn't even really do confessionals until you guys didn't do confessionals.
No, there's none of that.
They just existed.
Yes,
like they just were them. They just were doing their thing, their everyday thing, and doing their thing.
Yeah, exactly. It was a reality,
right?
Which is very interesting because it sounds like, just from listening to, you know, your process doing the show and during the show, that it was a discovery as you go. And what's interesting is a lot of the things that you did back then, unbeknownst to you, and you know, finding things out, you see a lot of that in reality shows today. So my question to you is, have you ever been given credit or any acknowledgement of everything that you did to really be someone that is groundbreaking and a trailblazer in this space? Because again, a lot of people eating off your plate.
Exactly.
So
I will be very honest. I don't know, not really. Also, just so you guys know, this is the 20-year anniversary of that show. Basically, 1 month from now, it will be 20 years when that show hit the air. But I think that like within our world as African Americans, Black people definitely, Akima, lots, everyone gets respect. I would say that like everything else in the real grand scheme of the world of television, people will say, oh yeah, because she did that. I think I had a meeting with an executive at Netflix, and he said, no, it wasn't. It was actually I think it was at NBC or Bravo, and the guy and someone said they needed to meet me for consideration for a show, and the guy said, if I was you, he was a white guy. He said, if I was you, I would just get on meetings with people and say, I created being Bobbi Brown. Like, what conversation are we actually having about anything else?
Mm-hmm.
He said, I wouldn't turn in a resume. I would do it. I was like, okay, great. Because he was just like, there, if you can do that, you can do anything. And basically, it's true. It is true because it is a series with no interviews. There was no script. And I had never done it before.
And had the highest ratings on the channel the entire.
It launched the channel. It launched the channel. But if you look at that and you go, oh, so you had a show that did that really brought real eyeballs and real, like, they were not in Atlanta doing Housewives of Atlanta. I remember the first meeting with that network and they said, why are they in Atlanta? They didn't. Listen, this was a coastal world. Television was very coastal. It was New York and LA. And I'm just saying that no one was even thinking about Atlanta in that way. We had a music scene and so in two ways, when I started doing music videos and commercials, no one was thinking about it in that way, especially for young Black directors. And we segued into that. The bulk of the production business in Atlanta, in the South at that time, was in North Carolina. So I'm not saying, I am saying that I have participated in two different ways in breaking, especially us, into marketplaces. And no, people don't recognize it. They don't celebrate it. I'm not called to be like, oh, we're doing 20 years of reality TV and they did a whole series, 7 hours.
I remember that. And I was like, how is Tracy?
7 hours of television.
Like, how is she not a part of this conversation?
Exactly.
And didn't they use some of your footage?
No, they did not.
They didn't. I swore that, or maybe somebody mentioned the show.
They I don't even know if they mentioned it, but I feel
like somebody mentioned the show. Something, because I was just,
because God forbid if they did, because we own it and they would have had to.
That's right. I know that's right. I know that's right. So, okay, so family, for those watching that may not be familiar, what she's saying is when you do anything that requires you to utilize somebody else's show, clips, IP, etc., that is called archival. Yes. You have to get that archival license.
Exactly.
So when you watch these documentaries or these docuseries and they talk, and archival is not just, it doesn't just, because people think archive's old. No, it is anything that is not the principal photography of what is being shot. So whether it's somebody's home videos or whether it's that money that you're going to have to pay Tracy and her team for anything from being Bobbi Brown, Whitney's on Our Own, or any of that.
Yes.
It's that. So yeah, just a little note. And we like to give you little tidbits about jargon and all the things on our show. And so if you are not familiar with Unscripted, archival must be licensed. Right. And it is not cheap depending on what you're looking for.
Exactly. Especially when people are no longer here. So therefore, let's just see.
And see, I think a lot of people mistake the fact that because, Whitney and Bobbi Kristina, rest in peace, are no longer here, they do not go under public domain. They are not, somebody owns that show.
Yeah.
That somebody is the person you're looking at. Her. Yeah. She owns that show. So just because they are now unfortunately deceased does not mean that you can take it and go into public domain, because it still belongs to someone.
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah. So let's talk about your journey, Tracy, because you have had an interesting journey. I watched your documentary where you were basically talking about everything that you did when you came into the business. And one, a few things really stuck out to me, but one thing that really stuck out to me is when you were working in the restaurant business, waiting tables, and you had a, I don't call anything chance because everything happens for a reason, but you were actually about to leave and someone asked you to wait on a table.
Yep.
And it turns out that it is L.A. Reid and Babyface.
Yes.
Which kind of sends you in a direction. I don't even know if that was the direction you were thinking of going in, because you were looking for a marketing position, if I'm not mistaken.
I was looking for finance. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. So yeah. So can you talk about the fact that an opportunity presents itself? Not the opportunity that you were looking for, but an opportunity, and the fact that it wasn't your lane, you took it anyway, and you did a phenomenal job in that lane. So can you talk about that?
Yeah. So basically, I was in Atlanta. I had moved to Atlanta, graduated college, and yeah, and to be honest, up front, I didn't even know who they were. When they gave me their credit card to pay, I was like, "Oh, LaFace." I think it said LaFace Productions or something, and I said, "What is this? And are y'all looking for some people marketing or something?" Because I had my resume with me.
Listen, them the days you made sure your resume was sharp and printed, no typos in your bag.
Is that a piece of paper, not an email?
Yes.
So
there was no such thing as an email.
No. And honestly, I mean, I literally was still, like I said, I was still at that moment in time, I still did not know anything about this industry whatsoever. And they were kind of fascinated. I think I felt like a unicorn or something to them, because they were really like, okay, this girl for real, she don't know who we are. She's asking us these questions. And then she said, your little company.
Oh, did you not? You didn't little company them.
Little company.
I was like, y'all heard of y'all little company.
Oh, wow. Little company.
And they were
little
just
company.
Like,
little company.
Wow. Not LaFace as your little company.
I mean, it wasn't just getting started. Calm down. They were a little company.
I mean, yes and no, though. Yes and no.
Like, they weren't little. They were producers. They were somebody. But
I'm like Janet, baby. Like, we were in that time frame. Janet,
they were just laughing inside. Now I can remember, but it was funny because they left and came back into the restaurant like, come here, take this card. Like, this is crazy. Like, she is Black in Atlanta. How does she not know who we are? And they didn't tell me. They told me their real name. Like, and even to this day, I have a hard time saying Babyface, because I'm like, Kenny, that's their names, And when I went home, I remember telling my girlfriend, I was like, yeah, these guys. One, his name was like, I think his name was Antonio or something. I don't even know. And then Kenny Edmonds. And my friend goes, you met Kenny Edmonds today? And I was going, yeah. And they said they got some company and they want me, they're going to send a car so I can come to some studio or whatever. We'll just see what's up. And I think, I think that was when I met either I think Tony Braxton or TLC. And I was just like, oh, okay, it's music and these kids, okay, they sing. Then it was funny because Kenny said, have you ever heard of like Whitney Houston or Bobby Brown? I was like, boy, stop playing. Of course, I heard of Whitney Houston and Bobby Brown. And then they introduced me to the guy at Warner Brothers. And he was like, hey, here's a couple magazines. You should read these. Come to my office and let's see what's up. And basically, I remember reading R&R magazine and Billboard, and they gave me a book, Hitman. And it was funny because maybe like a month later, I remember Kenny said, you sound like you've been in the business all your life. I said, I know, I've been studying.
See, and that was before you could chat GPT your life.
No, you had to read some books.
Yeah.
You had to read.
But you had to read all the books because there was no internet.
There was no internet.
There was no Googling it. Google was your mama telling you, look it up. Somebody told you, look it up. And look it up meant you had to find the books. There was no Amazon.
Encyclopedias, those heavy things that, oh my God.
Yeah.
Or go to the library.
Go into the library.
Which you did a lot.
System was your friend.
Yeah.
I went to the library a lot, especially growing up. I lived in the library on weekends.
Same.
Just reading.
Likewise. And you know what? I think that is why you were so successful, because that really stood out to me as well. The fact that, and the authors that you named, Tolkien, which is my favorite author, Shakespeare, who I absolutely love, and reading those types of authors at that young age really gave you an expanded vocabulary and an expanded thought process, because those were some extremely heavy hitters. Whereas today it is so easy that you can just Google something. You don't even have to Google it. You can pick your phone up and say, can you tell me about, which takes away from you actually learning. So how did that stand you in good stead? The fact that, your mom saying, look, I'm going to drop you off at the library. You're going to read some books. And then as you get older, that comes into play when you're working for someone like a LaFace Records.
Yeah. And I didn't work for LaFace. I worked for Warner Brothers, but
I'm sorry, Warner Brothers.
I just want to clarify that. I'm not enough LaFace alumni. But honestly, it is, I'll tell you this. So just recently, because I think I read so much as a young person, and then learning the industry, I had to start reading industry books, right? So, and I have a few favorites, and basically from there, then you get into your 30s and you're reading all the self-help, right? And so I kept getting removed from fiction, to be honest. And then recently I just started reading fiction again because I am tapping into romance, and a very good friend of mine, Kennedy Ryan, is a romance author, very highly successful romance author, and several of her projects are going to be adapted for television. And I started reading this series, and it was like being reborn, to be honest, because I was just like, oh, wait. Like, I was staying up like I was binge watching a TV show, couldn't put this book down. And I just kept reading it, and, I got to finish this one because I got to get to the next one and then the next one. And it just helped me remember what reading does for you. And I also remember, like, I was speaking to a psychologist because I loved Star Wars too. And the psychologist said that when you read, it expands your brain, which is probably why I was never going to stay in Chattanooga, Tennessee, because the reading just made your mind think bigger, feel bigger, want to explore. And then, I always was like, oh yeah, I am Luke Skywalker. The Force is with me. I will go conquer something in this world, So it is fascinating, but it's also as you get older, you tap into like, wow, this is really what these things do. So losing that is thinking that there will be a world where people won't be doing that is very depressing. But I do hope, there is a resurgence on TikTok and everything where the not the millennials, but Gen X, or they're showing books, and they want the actual hardbacks or paperbacks and things like that. And I'm just so excited to know that is what's happening. Because if they are reading it, then that means that their minds are being open in a different kind of way, and that we won't lose that, because it's interesting, because it also helps to fuel us to want human interaction.
Yeah, The one thing that I always said, because I am an avid reader, and just a short story, I remember the first time I went to the free library and I checked out one book, and she said, "You know, you can check out up to 10." And I damn near fainted. I said, "Wait a minute, what did you say?" She said, "You can check out up to 10 books." Because again, I love the written word so much. And much like you said, Tracy, my thing is, I would always tell people, because they say, "Why do you read so much?" I said, "Because I can go everywhere in my chair. I don't have to leave my house, and I can go to places I've never even thought about traveling to." And it gives you a wanderlust and a want to go to explore, to want to go see the pyramids, or go to see the Parthenon, or to just visit other worlds. And it just expands your mind, so that, and it's interesting when you're having a conversation with someone, the expansion of your vocabulary. Yeah. Because we always surprise people with that when we can speak. They're shocked. And when you're well read, it really puts them off their square, because that's not what they're expecting when you open your mouth.
Yeah.
True.
And plus, I just feel like when you, like, I can't really, like, God bless Audible. I know a lot of people listen to audiobooks. I can't do it. I can't do it. Like, I've tried Audible. Like, I know that I've been so busy, I haven't been able to ensconce myself in as many books as I would like. Most of the that I've been reading have been research for, like, whatever I was working on. But, like, I personally cannot do audiobooks. Now, don't get it twisted if you watching out there. I'm a voiceover artist, so you can book me to read your book. But for me, I don't ingest story that way.
Yeah.
So I love the idea that people are starting to crack open spines again.
Yeah.
I had a friend who, I was watching something. I don't know if I was watching it or if it was a meme, but he was like, "Yeah, I can't do that audio stuff. I got to bust open a book cheek." Like, I was like, "Wait."
Okay.
But I'm the same way. If I'm listening to an audiobook, I'm going to sleep.
Yes.
It's like, oh, okay.
I don't care how engaging the voice is. I don't care how I can't ingest my stories that way. I want to read it. I want to turn the page. I want to put the book in my bag. I want to whip it out, especially because I live in New York City. So, like, I don't drive unless I have to. So, like, if I'm on the train, I'm reading the script, or now I'm trying to force myself to get back into reading for pleasure.
Yeah.
Because when you start to, as a producer, as a director, you stop. It's very hard to read for pleasure. It's very hard to watch television or film for pleasure, because the minute they do some odd something or have a really weird shot or something, you're like, why did they shoot that way? Or something really good where you're like, that was a nice shot. And, like, if I'm watching anything with any of my friends, they're like, "Don't start." They be like, "Don't start. Watch the movie. Just watch the movie, ma'am."
I'm not that bad. It's interesting though, because my husband will say, "Oh, the lighting did this and that," and I'm like, "Oh, okay, yes, of course." But I'm trying to pay attention. I think I try to pay attention to story, and how did this happen type of thing. But I can enjoy it. I honestly, because I watch everything. It's funny because people will say that, "What do you watch?" And I'm like, everything. Why would I not? I'm a producer. I want to see what's happening. What are they doing and why? And what's selling and what's not selling, So I do watch a lot of everything. And I have a husband who likes television. So things that I'm missing, he'll say, "Oh, this was good. You should check that out." And I'm okay, cool. Which is why I started my what I'm watching this week list.
I've actually started a new thing. I make myself sit through at least once a week something I don't like. So I can figure out why I don't like it.
Yeah.
What about it is still viable?
Right. That's great.
That's like my new challenge to myself. Whatever I'm not into, I make myself at least watch one episode or one whatever once a week of something I really am not into, don't like, whatever, and figure out what I would have done different, why I don't like it. I don't like it, but it's still, is it something that's still successful? Why is it viable that I don't like? To challenge myself to think about creativity outside of just what works for me.
So I'm sorry. Okay. I want to ask you, I want to jump back to reality TV really quickly because you have created something that's pretty special for people who have decided that reality TV or TV may be something that I want to do.
Come on,
So you created reality TV Decoded. So can you share with people what reality TV Decoded is and why you decided to create something like that?
Yeah. So basically, and now it's TV Decoded and reality TV Decoded.
Oh,
But
okay.
basically, I created it because honestly, like I said, I came into the industry. I didn't go to film school. I taught myself, reading a book, teaching myself. No one. I didn't have a job at a lot of producers come from networks. Um, so I didn't have a job at a television company. I didn't start out as a PA or, anything where I was watching someone else. And I literally I had an idea. My partner and I said, we got an investor, let's go for it. And honestly, that's been my trajectory. I taught myself to understand the music industry. I taught myself how to produce music videos and commercials. So what I said was, I want to give back. And like, there are tons of people out there who are like me who want to do this and they just don't know where to start. And so I created this to be, well, one, to give knowledge to people. It's bad enough, especially for people of color, that a huge barrier of entry is money, access, and information. So at a minimum, I felt like I can create courses and I can drop jewels to really support people and teach them, give them little tidbits about the industry. Like today I wrote a article on LinkedIn just about the fact that I said, look, the price of fame is actually also the fact that any and everybody can make your story. There can be 200 movies about Diddy and Cassie now,
Mhm.
and there is nothing they can do about it. And there will be many more. And there are like already a dozen different.
Yeah.
So I know I've watched at least 3 of
Mhm.
them.
Right.
TMBs, there's one on Hulu. There's a few versions on Max.
You got some on Tubi as well.
And there's some on Tubi. Yep. And that's just the fiction ones. You just wait till, that's just the nonfiction ones.
We lost
Did we
her.
lose you, Tracy?
Yeah, we lost her for a second. Oh, there she is.
Oh, there you go.
No, you're back.
I'm back.
That's just the nonfiction ones. You wait till somebody says based on a true story and gives the fiction blown out, make it up Hollywood version of, I'm quite sure. I'm surprised that Law and Order hasn't pulled an episode down yet, because normally I remember when the Chris Brown Rihanna thing happened, there was a Law and Order episode not far from that when the pastor in Brooklyn, the bling pastor.
Mm-hmm.
I know that family personally. But there was a Law and Order episode about that. Like, so I know that this Law and Order episode is coming
this fall.
Right. Or what is going to be on? And now we have 3 versions again. We have original Law and Order, we have Organized Crime, and then we have SVU. So
we know it's going to be on there.
So you're gonna have a 3P.
They have I heard through someone recently that Hulu's already casting for whatever they're going to be doing.
Wow. So you're gonna have like a 3-piece, because with 3 Law and Orders, with everything that I'm hearing going on in the trial.
Yes, exactly.
Every single base, he done covered all the bases.
Yes. Exactly.
So it could definitely be another one of those, because they already did a cross show.
Yes.
Because my boy Steven was like the glue. Steven Strickland, shout out to Steven Strickland. He played the guy that was the glue between all the 3 different divisions. Right. So I know it's coming.
Oh wow.
I know it's coming. Tracy, I want to ask you something. It's a little personal, so if you rather not answer, please feel free. But I want to ask, because I think that when people think about producing or directing or creating unscripted, they don't think about when it's not easy. I know that, you recently lost your mom and it was very hard for you. And I want to talk a little bit about creating in and around grief. I feel like we don't talk about that enough. And so like being the creative that is grieving, that still must create, but also when you are, I know for me, I've done a lot of heavy docs and having to talk people through their grief and their like trauma responsibly. Can you talk a little bit about that from the unscripted perspective? Because I feel like nobody really touches on that, and it's so important.
Yeah, I mean, there's always a fine line between people feeling exploited and supported, right? And even for myself, interesting. Yes, I lost my mom, and honestly, I was in the middle of finishing a project. And I was directing, and I had to direct LL and Ice-T for the big scenes for that show, and then starting a documentary on women in hip hop. But I will say that those things blessed me because it kept, like, I could stay busy and I could stay connected to my dreams, right? But I do feel like it's kind of interesting because when we were doing Women in Hip Hop, I was interviewing Kim Osorio, who worked at the Source and had the big lawsuit. And I remember her saying, this interview feels like therapy. Because I was, really getting into, like, how did that feel? What did it make? To help sort of segue into, like, helping people to understand people's why. Like to think back to being Bobbi Brown, it honestly was about what is happening here. Why are people saying you are this thing? And who is this guy? That should be the approach. It's like to understand someone's why is definitely always the goal. And a lot of times people like to say humanize people, but it's not to humanize them because they are human, but it's also to be in connectivity with who they are as a human, to see them as a human. I mean, we got big blowback from people about being Bobbi Brown because they felt like, oh, Whitney should have it's so funny. What did someone say to me recently? I was at dinner somewhere. Oh, I was at dinner with these ladies, and half the table was like, oh my God, Tracy did being Bobbi Brown. And then the other couple of people said, well, you should have never did that show. And I was thinking, why? You're judging. What do you mean she shouldn't have did the show? You're making a lot of assumptions. People made lots of assumptions. You're assuming they were like, because I was like, because what? She was fresh out of rehab and she had a sober living coach sitting next to her in every scene. We just framed the person out. So little do you know. And honestly, when the cameras weren't on, they're just like chilling. They literally are entertainers. So they wanted to have fun in front of the camera and they wanted to be free. And if nothing else, it was her big middle finger to everyone who wanted to box her into a thing that wasn't really who she was as a Black woman growing up in Newark, New Jersey.
Everybody, they didn't realize that though Bobbi grew up in the projects of Boston, she was the hood. Whitney was the one that a two-piece shoe and then be like, all right, you all right?
Like, and she talked about that. And I remember reading an article where she did an interview. That article, that was like a 4 or 5 page article. And she talked about, the fact that she was grateful to Clive Davis and everything for everything that people had done. But she said, I felt boxed in. And the thing that will mess anybody up is faking a funk.
Yeah.
Because you can only do it for so long.
And she never did it. Everyone around her did.
Right.
Yes, exactly.
It was never really her.
Right.
But in that, right, Tracy, and thank you for touching on the fact that when us as unscripted directors, producers, we are therapists.
Yeah.
Because often we are taking someone's experience, someone's lived experience, both the positive and the challenging parts of that, and exposing it. But we are tasked with doing that to where it's entertaining to the viewer, but it's not, like you said, exploitative to the subject.
Yeah.
Or where we're not, and knowing how far to push for your answers.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, too, the biggest example for us was the Houston's on Our Own.
Right, because Whitney was already gone.
Whitney had just died.
Yep.
This is a little more information that people didn't know. So right before Whitney passed, we like probably a few months before, we were having conversations with her about doing something else, doing maybe another show with her and Bobbi Kristina, her sister-in-law, and everything. So then I was at him because I used to live in Atlanta, and now I'm living in Jersey. I'm speaking to her sister-in-law, and we had said, "Oh, I'll come to Atlanta to meet with everyone." And they called me back and said, "Oh, we have to go to the Grammys." So, and I had just come back from, I think I had just come back from Europe. And so I said, "Hey, you know what? Let's push it a week. I'll come to Atlanta when you guys get back. And then we'll be able to sit down. We can talk about the project and everything." Well, obviously that didn't happen because Whitney passed away. So then when the family came here to Jersey for the funeral and everything, my partner and I remember looking, well, first of all, Bobby's there's all this commotion, this, that, and the other. I went to the bathroom, and it's interesting that church had like a little lounge kind of area, and then there's the bathroom part or something. And that was the longest service I've ever been to in my life. And I went to like a Holy Ghost church. I grew up in the Holy Ghost, but this was this funeral was, it went on for some hours. And I had gone down there because I had a little snack in my purse, and I was going to get me a snack. And Bobbi Kristina said to me, because also, you know what happens when you work with people on the show, especially in non-scripted. At this point, we're family, right?
Yeah, you get very close. I'm still close to so many of my subjects.
Exactly. So she's like, "Auntie, why did my daddy leave?" And I'm going, "I don't know, girl. I don't know what was going on with your daddy. I had to stay out of that day." So we're at the wake, looking at her, thinking, this kid is 19 years old. Her mom's gone. Her dad has a new wife. And what's going to happen to her? Because Bobbi Kristina just spent her whole life running up behind Bobby and Whitney, right? And talking to the sister-in-law. And then they said, "Well, do you still want to do the show?" And my partner and I were like, "I guess. Well, at least it'll give Bobbi Kristina something to do."
Right.
Right. And, basically went to the network and said, they're open to doing a show. I want to make sure she's taken care of. And honestly, what else could I do as a producer, as a person she was calling auntie? I didn't have the resources to be like, you know what, forget that. Just come live in my house for 6 months. I'll take care of you. Right. But that resource would get us the opportunity to put eyes on her. So a lot of times people don't understand, because the public was upset because they felt like, why did they even do that show following that little girl after the loss of her mom? And we're like, whoa, we did it to be with her financially for everyone, and to make sure she was good, to be able to say, hey, get up. You got to get up. You got to go to work. You got to hang out with us. You got to see us. You got to do this. Here's a schedule. Right. We're traveling with you. I don't know if they would have went to Hawaii and done a ceremony for her to connect with her mom. I don't know if any of
that's when she was tied up with the little boy and that whole thing. So like, at least with the cameras running, there was
eyes on
positive on the two of them. Because once the show was over is when she wound up getting into the mix of the foolishness, and then she died.
Exactly. That's exactly what happened. Wow. And honestly, because even when the show was happening, guess what? I mean, he's a kid. I'm like, boy, you better sit down somewhere, and you better get her over here. And you guys are going where we say go, and you're doing what we say do. And honestly, that was a weird situation, because also, like, I wasn't the showrunner. I was executive producing. Our showrunner, his mother passed. So it became very traumatic. So we ended up having he left, and I had to finish the show as the showrunner, because it was just too much, for everyone. But and I always say, in hindsight, I feel like the show was good. the timing of us releasing the show, we released it too soon. We should have let the public wait a second and then released it, and people were like, oh, this is what happened, this is how they were moving about their lives after Whitney passed. We just did, that was the only thing. I think the release date hurt us a lot. But people judge then too, like, you guys are exploiting. We're not exploiting. Do you know these people? Do you have the, I had a big fight with a very, very big producer during that time, because in that producer, I said, you're wealthy. If you want to freaking pay to take care of Bobbi Kristina right now, by all means, do. I don't have that. What I have is the resource of this show to try to keep my hands on her. And that person apologized to me and said, you know what, you have a good point. You're right. And let me step back and stop stepping in judgment, and
I mean, but we've also created, the public is, once you put it in public domain, in public space, you are also putting it out there with the hope that it's not judged harshly, but with the understanding that no matter what, you damned if you do, you damned if you don't.
Exactly.
And that, especially in unscripted. Mm-hmm. Somebody's always going to be offended. Somebody's always going to act up and make it look crazy. Somebody's always going to blame the edit, but I can't edit what you ain't do. Somebody like it's all those things, right? And
right.
So, and in unscripted world, you are open to so much scrutiny and so much whatever, but you are also able to get more into the mind and the spirit of these humans, and understand, and I get why people say humanize them, because yes, we know that they're humans by default, but when you are part of something so big as a Whitney, as a Bobbi, as a Sissy, as a Dion, like when you're when your whole family
exactly,
you know what I mean, as a Luther, because he was a big part of Whitney's life. When you're a part of something that large, you are no longer seen as human. You're not allowed to have bad days. You're not allowed to make mistakes. You're not allowed to just be a kid.
Mm-hmm.
You're not. So reality also gives the opportunity for you to have some of that in the public eye. And remember, like, there were plenty of times on the Bobbi Kristina, on our own show, where when Bobbi would be talking to Miss Pat, you remember she was a kid.
Yeah,
because she very much wanted to be grown, and she was out there. She was, dressing up, and she was trying to be
boyfriend,
her little boyfriend / brother.
Exactly.
Okay.
I mean, it wasn't blood, but it was still weird.
It was
But her, she was trying to be Whitney part 2, like how she dressed. You could tell her hairstyles, how she dressed, how she carried herself, how she walked, how she talked.
Yeah.
And when you would see her kind of get either corrected by Miss Pat, because Miss Pat wasn't playing them, she didn't play that. Or when Miss Sissy would kind of come in and like
those looks. Yeah.
You remember that this is a little black girl whose family ain't having it.
Mm-mm. Yeah.
And so that also was really, really sweet. Like, I think that you guys did a wonderful job with all of those shows. And like, again, we make television for the entertainment of the public, but the public also is, especially now in the reality TV, I mean, in the social media era, they're always gonna have something to say. And somebody always wants to become famous by being the most mean or the most aggressive or the most ugly in their commentary, because that's what happens. But as we get closer to the end of our conversation, I would like to say, I would like to ask you, what's next? I know you have so much going, like the industry is contracting, budgets are contracting, opportunities are getting smaller, and your network is literally now in this economy and climate your only network. So what is next for Tracy Baker-Simmons and TV Decoded, reality TV Decoded, all that? What's next?
So, I was a co-EP on the Nelly and Ashanti project, which is coming out next month on Peacock. So and it's fun and cool. And I remember Nelly always saying, "You did Bobbi and Whitney, right?" And I'm like, "Oh, don't even go there." But so that show's coming out, and to be honest, I am developing a couple of docs and really spending a lot of time sharing knowledge about the industry. But I realized the other day I'm doing research at the same time for myself, because it is changing. I hate to say it's contracting because I'm like, no, I can name 20 shows that I have not seen right now. So there's a lot of TV out there. So and there will be more and more and more. And there's tons of studios popping up in Jersey, in the scripted space.
You guys are becoming the next phase of Hollywood.
Right, exactly. And look, it's the birthplace of film. So they're just wanting to bring it back. And so I am spending time just exploring what that is and what it looks like and the possibilities of how it works and being independent, and also just knowing that I feel like we're stepping into an era where we're going to have to figure out how to make sure our stories are being told. So one, we need to know how the business works or what's happening in it, and then how to resource how to actually tap into the capital to be able to create and produce the projects. I had a conversation with a colleague earlier today, and I said, the more people that we can tap into that have financing, there will not be a shortage of great storytellers out here with experience who would be willing to jump at an opportunity to participate or be a part of a project. So now we just have to tap into the money and also making sure that the people who are navigating have the experience to navigate properly, and then, I'm committed to really teaching, because someday I won't be doing this, but I'm hoping that it doesn't mean that there won't be people like me who are continuing to do this. Black storytellers who are created, in the AI space or whatever other new frontier there is. And, and as much as I can make sure that people know what's happening and how to, read a book.
Okay.
It's possible.
Yeah.
For
So
sure.
I just have two more questions for you, because I said I have to ask my wife's question. She wanted to know, from a reality TV standpoint, if they do you film all year long, or do they take a break while showing the current season? That was her question.
Most shows take a break. They
Okay.
they have an end date, and then they go and finish the edit. Like usually the edit is happening while we're filming, but it starts later. And we're usually wrap up the show from the filming side, and they're still editing the show, and then we do what's called pickups if it's needed to fill in if there's something missing. We have a few pickup days, not a lot, but yeah, they take a break. Like the Housewives, they're not filming right now. It's on the air, they're done filming, but they're getting ready to do their reunion, which means it's getting close to when the season's ending, and all the shows are edited. But yeah, every show, including even Love and Hip Hop, they take a break from filming.
Okay. Now, the last question that I wanted to ask you, it's kind of like a twofold, because there's something that, I would love for you to give advice on this.
Mm-hmm.
I was watching your documentary, and
thank you for
you
watching.
had started. It was phenomenal. You had started the company Strange Fruit.
Mm-hmm.
You lost it.
Mm-hmm.
You go to Lionsgate,
Mm-hmm.
and you're applying for an executive assistant position.
Yes.
And the president of Lionsgate has a talk with you.
Mm-hmm.
And he's basically telling you that if you take this job,
Mm-hmm.
your film career is basically over.
Mm-hmm.
And then he says, if you are going to be a producer, then produce.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that very profound.
Mm-hmm.
So, to your advice, what would your advice be to anyone that may have started something,
mm-hmm.
and they hit a snag or a bump in the road,
Mm-hmm.
and they decide that, hey, I'm going to do something else, but this is my love. And then you get that. So what would be your advice for someone who finds themselves in the same position that you found yourself in, sitting in his office?
Right. I think like no one could have told me, that guy had to tell me that thing, right? I'm big on divine positioning, divine. Like I needed to my path had to be that thing. Apply for this job so this guy can tell you to go do this. I remember speaking of books, interestingly enough, I think God speaks to me through books because I was at a bookstore before I applied for that job and a book fell off the shelf. I swear it fell off the shelf in the bookstore in Sherman Oaks at the Barnes and Nobles on Ventura Boulevard. And it said, Too Busy Not to Pray. The book was called Too Busy Not to Pray. And I remember reading that book before I had that meeting with the guy. And, the whole thing was God order my steps, light my path, show me, because literally I was at a loss. Like that was a death for me. That was my first company. And to lose that to partners that I had brought in, hoping to support the dream, only to steal the dream, or so I thought, was very, very devastating. I was very invested and it was very devastating. So I would say to anyone, what does happen? It happened twice to me. I was working in the business, doing music videos and commercials, trying to make films, and I met Rico Wade with Organized Noise. And he said, I want to have a film company. I want to, and I said, great. And then he said, come work with me. Okay, perfect. And we were going to do a company called Red Clay. And then a year in, we weren't making films. We were still making music. But I had a whole lot of books I was reading, and I was really studying how the studio system worked and everything. And I remember someone called me and asked me to do them a favor. They were shooting a video, and they said, can you come and help us? Because the people are going to come. We got the money for the budget, but we really just got the money for the budget. We don't really know what we're doing. And I said, hey, can I take a couple of days to go help out my friends? And he was like, sure, of course, whatever. And I remember coming back and sitting in the office, bawling my eyes out. And he said, what is wrong with you? And I said, I'm a producer. And he said, okay, of course. What's the problem? And I was like, but I'm not producing. I'm not producing here. You're making music and I'm keeping you on track. And he said, what does that mean? And I said, I need to go produce it. I gave a speech to the kids the other day, and I was like, find that thing that you would do if you wasn't getting paid for it. And when you're not doing it, hurts. Because I'm going to tell you right now, when I'm not producing, it hurts. And honestly, after that and moving to LA and that other situation with Strange Fruit happening, when that guy said that to me, like, you'll never go on a set. You will be at that desk. This will be different. I knew what that felt like already. And I was like, no, I have to keep trying. And thank God for my best friend who said, just do it again. You did it before. Make another company. Don't worry about it. Don't let someone steal your dream. So I would say my advice would be figure out how to push yourself and you might have to do something. You know what? I babysat for my friends, and now the kid that I babysat was in the Olympics. But I did that while I was working on the business plan to start over. So just don't think if you're taking a dip someplace or a pivot to something else, or you have to do something to feed your family or keep a roof over your head, work on your scripts at night, work on budgets at night. Just keep producing, and basically you'll find your footing again. But don't ever let anyone steal your dream.
Amen. I tell people all the time, like, just do it. I mean, but let's be real. Just do it sounds good, and we mean it, but there is still skill for that. You still need to have some kind of plan. Just do it means go find the opportunities, whether you're getting paid for it because you got to pay your bills, or you're doing it as a passion project because it's what you want to do, or you're helping a friend or whatever. So like make it make sense. for your life and wherever you are.
Yes.
But do the thing. So if you got to have a survival job and you're doing it on nights, weekends, and fake sick days, okay. If
exactly.
you know what I mean? Whatever that is. But yes,
Right.
producers produce.
Yeah.
Directors
Producers produce, writers write. I remember Julie Dash saying, I write every day. Even if I'm not writing for someone or something, I'm writing every day. And that's what it is. That's the gig. I'm sorry, producers, music producers, they're making beats. I mean, what did DJ Mustard say? He was sending the guy 20 beats a day or something. He was just sending all these beats. He didn't know which one would be. He didn't even know which beat he used until he dropped the song.
Right.
Wow.
What if he said, I'm not sending this guy anymore beats, he ain't even using, I don't know what's going on. He was just like, I'm just going to keep sending them until that one happens. So that's what it is. I mean, the curse of being, I don't know if it's a curse, but the thing about being creative is that you always have ideas. And then you have to go, okay, I've been lately, I'm like, okay, I need you to focus on one thing. You have to get one thing off the ground right now. It is crucial. You are going to, because I'm in a season where my phone is not ringing for me to work on someone's show. I am taking that as a sign that I need to make a show that I am working on. And it's like, you have 10 ideas. Which one do you feel the closest to get over the threshold? Okay, now dial in on that and tell everyone, give me a second for everything else.
Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, this has been a masterclass. We strive to bring you the best of the best, and not only because that's what we do, but because we like for our audience to learn and to be able to take things away immediately that they can incorporate into their daily journey in this business, because it is an extremely hard business.
Yeah.
So, Miss Simmons, where can people find you on social media? Because we want everyone to follow you, because I have been stalking your IG page and you got some good stuff on there. And again, when I talk about free information, if you just go to her Instagram page, you will be amazed at what you see there. So people saying, well, I don't know where this is and I can't find this. So can you tell everyone where they can find you so they can get some of that good stuff?
So on Instagram, I am T Baker-Simmons. And actually on all my social media, that's my handle. And then, of course, I'm Tracy Baker-Simmons on LinkedIn, where I have been writing more articles lately. And then definitely my Instagram is totally now really dedicated. We have All TV Decoded Instagram as well. But my personal it's dedicated to what I'm watching, why I'm watching it, what I'm getting out of it, if it just makes me happy because I love sports, but also sports is a story, and and what is happening YouTube and why it's important, and all things in between. And then I'm always each week teaching something about the industry. Like, did you know this? Do you know this? So basically that's me. That's my give back. That's my, ultimately my legacy. So that honestly, to tap into that. And and honestly on Instagram, I'm very, I check my messages, my DMs and everything, because I want to be a resource, and I don't want to be that person that's not responding or talking to people, or, just give, people call me all the time and say, should I do this or what? Can I ask you a quick question? And I'm like, yeah, I hate it when they go, can I pick your brain? No, you can't pick my brain, but you
can. Oh my God. I cannot stand that phrase.
Yeah, you can ask me a quick question, but if you want to consult, we have to talk about what.
Right, you can't pick my brain, but you can pick a price. Here's my consulting list.
I love that.
You cannot pick my brain, but you can pick your price.
We don't do that.
Here is the list.
Yeah. Here is the list, because come on now, we gotta get so far. It's like
so I'm gonna give y'all some free game. Thank me later.
Okay.
If you are creative in this space, and you are trying to figure out where you should be, you should have a YouTube channel. But what I want you to do is I want you to go to Miss Simmons' Instagram page, and I want you to scroll her Do You Know? And I want you to click on what she's talking about when she's talking about YouTube. If you're not familiar what is going on with YouTube right now, and I'm not going to say anything because I want you to read it for yourself.
Yes. Yeah. Yep.
So
it's something special. I mean, it's interesting because I was talking to someone earlier today and they said, should we just put it on YouTube? They made this show and they're fixed. I said, you need to fix this. And then they said, well, should we just put it on YouTube? And I was like, YouTube? Do you know how many channels are on YouTube? Do you know the eyeballs you're fighting for on there? Like, you need to think clearly, people. It is a full-time job. So yeah, but definitely. And thank you for watching my doc on YouTube, and my YouTube channel is TV Decoded. I'm actually about to revamp it a bit because I do want to do more on there. I'm on Substack as well. And I am going to do a TV Decoded podcast as well. So.
Okay, that is amazing. Well, Miss Simmons, thank you for taking time out of your busy day and joining myself and my amazing co-host, Okima Timur, on a conversation with. We would love to have you back because I had all this that I didn't get to.
Of course. It's not new. Every time we have a guest, Floyd has 85 questions he hasn't asked.
That's fine.
Which we love because then I make sure that because he's got 85, I need like 4. It works. And usually our guest, if it's someone I personally know, I know how to dig and then I let it go. Yeah. And we just work well together. So it works. But it was so sweet to have you, sis. And I love and appreciate you. You know, I know, we know.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you guys again for having me. And just reach out and I'm happy to come back. I'm sure there's way more to talk about.
Absolutely. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for joining myself, the amazing Tracy Baker-Simmons, and the amazing Okima Timur on a conversation with. And as always, love it like a hobby, but treat it like a business. Have an absolutely amazing
don't
night.
Go yet.
Okay.
Oh, hold on. Don't do that. Okay.
Ready? We're gonna take a picture. 1, 2, 3. You gotta always take a picture.
Okay, perfect.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. Good night.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay.